Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. There we go. So, good morning, and thank you all for coming to our population-focused learning series on Asian culture and community. This is our fourth series for 2019. My name is Isaac Baez. I am the Engagement and Inclusion Coordinator here for StarkMHAR as part of the System of Care, Culture, and Linguistic Competency. We're very excited to have you all here for this special event. We have a great presentation coming up, as well as a panel discussion on Asian culture. We wanted to inform that we will no longer be printing out the PowerPoint slides for our population-focused learning series. The binders that we're given are currently filled, and we hope that you may continue creating your own binders. The Inclusion Toolkit has also been updated and has all the previous training sessions. The population-focused learning series will have 3 more topics for 2020. In your folders, you have several things. There is an agenda, a list with the information of the keynote speakers, as well as the panelists. Your input is important to us. There is a survey that we would like for you to fill out towards the end of the training. You may also leave it on the table before you leave. There's also an index cards within your folder. We ask that if you do have a question for the panelists, please write it down on the cards during the presentation or panel discussion, and some of our volunteers will help collect them. All this information, as well as the presentation, will also be included on the website. This training session will help understand the culture of the Asian community and some of their history. We do apologize that there will be no CEUs for this training session. We hope that this information will help you understand the community to its fullest, and let me introduce the speaker. Elaine So, CEO of Asia. Elaine So became the CEO of Asia Services in Action Incorporated Asia in spring 2019 after serving as the interim CEO for 7 months. While Elaine has been an attorney since 2006, she has been promoting awareness of the legal issues and social concerns facing the Asian American Pacific Islanders, AAPI community, since she was a law student and member of the National Asian Pacific American Bar Association and the Asian American Bar Association board member. Using her skills in advocacy, fundraising, and strategic, Elaine has been involved with the Asian Incorporated since 2008. First as a volunteer, then a long-serving board member, using her skills in advocacy, fundraising, and strategic planning to serve the immigrant and refugee community in Ohio. Elaine has been recognized for her work as an attorney by selection to the Ohio Rising Star list in 2011, 2013, 2014, 2015, and 2016 as a published in Super Lawyers magazine. For 2019, Elaine has been selected to the list of Ohio Super Lawyers. Elaine received her undergrad degree from Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT, and her law degree from the University of Akron School of Law. Let's give a round of applause to Elaine So.
Good morning, everyone. I'm so excited to welcome you to the continent of Asia and also share a little bit about Asian Services in Action. So I don't know if it would surprise folks that Asia is a continent composed of 48 countries. This map identifies some of the countries. And I don't know what the audience thinks about when they think or hear the word Asia. Perhaps people think about China, since it's the largest country on the continent. But did you also know that some of Central Asia is included among the countries of Asia, including Afghanistan and Middle Eastern countries. The Asian continent countries that Asian Services in Action, which I'll refer to as Asia, works with in Ohio includes primarily Chinese, Vietnamese, Thai, Hmong, and some ethnic groups from Burma, also known as Myanmar, the Bhutanese community, and the Nepali community. I don't know if folks were aware that Asia is the largest continent in the world, and also includes the highest number of billionaires in the world. 60% of the world's population lives in Asia, and 90% of the world's rice is consumed in Asian countries. But the rice is very different depending on what area of the continent the community consumes rice. The main three religions are Hinduism, Islam, and Buddhism. And it is a continent with the most different ethnic groups and different languages. Some of the fastest developing countries in the world are in Asia, and the 10 biggest cities are Tokyo and Osaka in Japan, Delhi, Kolkata, and Mumbai in India, Dhaka, Bangladesh, Shanghai, Beijing, Chongqing in China, and Karachi in Pakistan. So my Asian heritage, I am the daughter of a Chinese father and a Filipino mother. Oops, go back. You know, my parents met while they were students in the Chicago area, and so I'm originally from Chicago, but I've moved here to Ohio and lived here probably longer than I've lived anywhere else. All right, Asian culture. So, you know, if you've ever met someone from the Asian community, you know that it is a community that is a very collective community, which is very contrasted to the kind of independent spirit of Americans, or people that live in the United States. When I was a very small child, I traveled to China with my family, and even though I had not spoken a word to the people that were in China, they knew that I was American somehow. I don't know how. And when, because I'd run off, apparently had run off away from my family to go look at something, but, I later, it was later explained to me that doing that act in and of itself, not having spoken a single word, that allowed the people who are in China to identify me as an American, because I had run off from my family on my own, instead of traveling together with my family. So I guess that kind of really illustrates the kind of U.S. individualism and independence. On the way over here, I was driving in a car with some of my team members, and we were commenting on how, yeah, we're traveling together, but in the United States, it's one person, one car, instead of the more collective nature in other countries, and particularly in the Asian community, that we travel together. So now this chart is kind of an illustration of how Asian culture is a mostly high context culture, while the U.S. is a low context culture. And for illustration, low context cultures are characterized by a high degree of cultural, ethnic, and linguistic diversity, and you know, where things are scheduled and they have to be done at a particular time, you know, one thing at a time. And efficiency is the most important thing. You know, in the United States, time is money. But in the Asian culture, the priority is on you know, relationships, so that there's less emphasis on words and more emphasis on action. So you know, using a lot of words is not what's most important. In fact, it's more a focus on the relationship, and you can be silent and still have communicated. Additionally, in the Asian culture, there's a strong emphasis on tradition. So things are done because it is part of the culture. It is a tradition, and so for that reason, a lot of times, change happens slowly, and people are more rooted in things that have been done in the past, and a respect for the past. And whereas in the United States, time is money, and scheduling is so important. For Asian cultures, that's why sometimes we're on Asian time, meaning that if you stopped and saw a friend, you take the time to converse with that friend rather than hurry to a meeting. So that's where that phrase, and it's an accurate stereotype that Asians operate on Asian time. So. And so high context cultures, like the Asian cultures, they're more monocultural. So they're, this whole idea of being part of a collective, and a collective culture. So there's a lot of identity with the family unit as opposed to individual. So I was asked to share something about my own experiences as an Asian in this country, and so even though I'm I guess I'm technically an ABC, although I'm Chinese and Filipino, but I do fall into that category of being an American-born Chinese, in the sense that I have adopted a lot of cultural components of being in the United States, but one element that I kind of have to live with is having an Asian mother, and so having an Asian mother, one of the stereotypes is the whole idea of a tiger mom or something along those lines, and while that's a stereotype, we all know that stereotypes, there's some truth that is amplified. And the truth of the matter with that particular Asian stereotype is that they do strongly encourage you to do everything possible to be successful, and it comes from a place of love, because obviously I know my mother wants the best for me. But to this day, I went to MIT and I became a lawyer, but to this day, my mom still holds out hope that I'm going to become a medical doctor. So, you'll hear a little bit more about Asian Services in Action and how we have a community health center. But I have regular conversations with my mom, and she's been asking me, because we have the medical center. She said, you can still go to medical school and still work at Asia. All right, now just a brief history of the Asian American Pacific Islander immigrant history in this country. So I don't know how much folks are aware of the Chinese Exclusion Act from 1882, which halted all Chinese immigration, and even those born in the United States could be denied citizen rights. And that it wasn't repealed until the Magnuson Act in 1943. So this was all a reaction to the California gold rush, and so they didn't want the United States. It's all about the individual, right? So there's no sharing of successes, I guess. And so for that extended period of time, which is more than 60 years, Chinese people living in the United States were kind of discounted citizens, even if they were born here. Then World War II happened, and in 1942, there were Japanese internment camps. I mean, you may or may not have heard, I forget who tweeted it or who said it recently in the news, making a comparison about something happening in Washington D.C. and comparing it to the lack of due process of the Japanese internment. I won't specify, but I think folks in the audience may have heard this reference comparing a certain proceedings happening in Washington D.C. with the lack of due process in Japanese internment camps, which is completely a poor comparison, because the Japanese internment camps were a situation where folks were stripped of everything that they owned and forced to live in these camps, which I cannot imagine. There's a wonderful woman who had her family. She was from California. They were transported to Ohio, which is her Ohio connection. Her family was transported from California to Ohio to live in an internment camp, and it was just unbelievable. But now, she is the former general counsel of some major corporations and the former president of the National Association of Asian American Pacific American Bar Association. Then in post-1965, the Hart-Celler Act opened up new waves of immigration, and the AAPI community was particularly impacted because as a result of that legislation, over 7 million new Asian immigrants arrived between 1971 and 2002. So based on the last census, the AAPI community is the fastest growing population. So, and we hope that in 2020, the results will be even better. So here's a little bit of information about the migration pattern in Northeast Ohio. So as I referenced, in the 40s and 50s, the Japanese were transported to Ohio as a result of the internment camps. Then in the 1960s, the Filipino community arrived in the area primarily as professionals, because at that time there was a need for medical professionals and others. So that immigration wave occurred in Northeast Ohio. Then in the 1960s and 70s, Vietnamese and Chinese communities moved here. In the 70s and 80s, there were Koreans. And in the 1980s and 1990s, the Laotian and Cambodian and Hmong communities grew into Ohio. And since the 1990s, there has been, to the present, there's been an influx of the Karen community, the Burmese community, Bhutanese, Uzbek, Afghans, and Iraqi. So, for myself, as I've already referenced, I'm born in the United States, and yet I have my own set of challenges, right? I mean, I attended MIT. I then became a lawyer, and for so many years, for 13 years, I worked at a law firm where I was the only one that looked like me. There wasn't anyone that looked like me, and in fact, I used to do product liability work where that requires like a product expert or subject matter expert to often testify, for the case. And one day I was traveling at Case Western Reserve University to meet with an expert. But like most campuses, sometimes parking is a challenge. And that particular day, they were having like a job fair or something like that. So parking was a particular premium that day. So I couldn't find parking. Parked at one end of the campus and then like hot-footed it all the way to the place where I had to be. And then when I arrived at the place where we were meeting to meet with the expert, I plopped down my stuff and I said, "Gosh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry I'm late. Now we can get started." And there was a table, a conference room table full of Caucasian men or white men who one of them, I guess, stood up as the representative and said, "Well, thank God you're finally here. We can get started." And then I looked around. I was like, "Wait, they think that I'm the subject matter expert for the technology." But then I have to explain, I'm a lawyer, just like the rest of you around the table. We're still waiting for the engineer or whomever is going to come. I'm also an engineer, but I wasn't an engineer in that context. And I had that experience probably throughout my legal career, where I would walk in and someone would think that I'm there for a different reason. I mean, I used to ride the elevator in the Cuyahoga County courthouse, and as soon as I would walk in, and if you've ever been into the Cuyahoga County courthouse, it's this big crowds, and you have to try to catch the elevator. Otherwise, you have to wait 30 minutes to get up the tower in that particular building. And so I was like rushing to the elevator, and then everybody was looking around at each other, and almost without exception, but sometimes if they knew me, then they knew that I was a lawyer. But the lawyers that would get on the elevator would say, "Do you freelance?" And then I was like, I mean, I guess you could call it freelance if you're an attorney. I take clients, so my response would always be, "Yeah, I take clients." And then the attorneys would give me their business cards and say, "So how much do you charge per page?" And I was like, "Per page?" And they said, "Well, you're a court reporter, right?" So I always had to kind of battle those kinds of obstacles in terms of the perception. One other lawyer example. So as an attorney, sometimes I would have to do things called depositions, which are basically where you interview a witness as part of a case. And one time, because the party who was the plaintiff had a fear of leaving their home, as alleged fear of leaving their home as a result of the incident where they sustained an injury. So I had to go to their home to do the deposition, and I show up at the home, and someone opens the door, and it's the court reporter for that particular deposition, and they say, and then the person says, "Oh, are you the home health aide?" And I'm like, "Why would I be wearing a suit?" and being the home health aide. So so those are some of the stereotypes and things like that in terms of identifying that I've dealt with in my legal career. Okay, so next I'm going to talk about some of the impact, which is another thing that we were talking about in the car on the way over here. The whole idea that the United States is that this focus on individualism, so like one person, one car. There's a global impact, an environmental impact to the footprint that we all have in this country, between the cars and the emissions and all the rest of it, which impacts agriculture and things like that. And the impact for that is, okay, so if you don't have a sustainable agriculture, then people are fighting over food. And then, that leads to, I guess, separating people in terms of what their value might be, and that leads to situations where people have to seek refuge in other countries. So these are some categories of that impact. Refugees, immigrants, asylum seekers, internally displaced persons. Some of the panelists will be talking in a little bit more detail about what happens in certain countries when you're forced to prioritize values of people. And hopefully in this country there will be a future for refugees because of those types of challenges. You know, for refugees coming into this country, it's rarely a choice in terms of, or it's never a choice. It's, you know, people seeking refuge, it's not a choice that they're transitioning. For immigrants, I have debated this with other folks because surely there's a distinction between refugees and immigrants in the sense that immigrants apply for to enter into the country, which is different than refugees who are in risk of imminent harm. But that doesn't mean that immigrants aren't facing challenges in their home country that cause them to want to leave their country for a better life in this country. This is a illustration of the top 10 largest U.S. immigrant groups in this country. This is data from 2017. The Asian countries that are represented include the Philippines, Vietnam, China, India, and Korea. And as you can see, India has the largest number of immigrants. Now this is a graph of the history of U.S. refugee admissions from 1980 to the present. And I don't know if anyone else in the room is shocked by the dramatic decline from 1980 until the present. I mean, if you look at the numbers, it was over 225,000 refugees that were permitted to be welcomed into this country in 1980, and then compare that to 20, you know, I mean, it's been reduced to a fraction of 10% in this short period of time. And you know, I was on an airplane with a member of Donald Trump's transition team recently, and he told me that, yeah, that number is going to go to 0, is what he told me, which is you know, it really shocked me because, you know, immigrants and refugees really add to this country, and I think that most folks have, in fact, everyone unless you're a Native American, has origins in another country. And yeah, enough about that. Okay, so this is my my Asia family, my Asian Services in Action family. We recently, you know, I guess quote unquote, bought a new home in Akron, and this was at our open house. And you can see the amount of diversity. You know, most of our team has an origin in another country. And in fact, at Asian Services in Action, there are 26 languages. The majority of our staff is either bilingual or multilingual. Some of the top languages spoken are Mandarin Chinese, Nepali, Spanish, Hindi, Cantonese Chinese, Karen, Burmese, Vietnamese, Thai, but we also have folks that speak Mon, Bengali, Congolese. So we're represented here in this picture. Okay, a little bit about Asian Services in Action. The organization was founded in 1995 by a group of Asian women who saw the need for culturally and linguistically appropriate health and human services. And for the past 23 years, Asia has really taken on the most challenging tasks to help the underserved, low-income, and immigrant communities. This is our client demographics. So there is a fair mix of different communities that are being served. But as you can see, there's over 300,000 AAPIs that reside in the state of Ohio, and Asia is serving almost 60,000. Now these are some of the highest number of challenges and stressors for the Northeast Ohio refugee community. Most if not all of the refugees are coming from war-torn or conflict areas, so they suffer from PTSD, and/or they've had personal experience with some type of violence. Additionally, illiteracy. A lot of refugees are illiterate in their own languages, and the reason, as it's been explained to me, is that when they're living in refugee camps, they have an option. They have an option of either learning their native language, the literacy part, like learning how to write in their native language, or possibly learning English. And so some people who are living in those refugee camps, they will opt to study English instead of their own native language. And I was actually shocked that one of my team members, who is a refugee from a war-torn country, or a conflict area, is illiterate in his own language. He can speak fluently the language, but he cannot read or write in his language because he opted to study English in order to, that was always his goal. His goal was always that he was going to make it to America, and so he had to have the literacy skills for the United States instead of studying to read and write in his own native language. And additionally, in some countries, the challenges or barriers to education are such, and such because the population is so large that some people who live in more rural areas don't have access to written education. One example is China, of all places. As industrialized and sophisticated as China is, because there were so many people living in China that could not read or write in their own language, they simplified the Chinese language so that people could learn on a simplified basis that language. Additionally, there are some refugees who come to this country, and they are coming as an older adult, and when you're older, it is harder to learn and acquire new skills. So learning a new language when you're an older person is more difficult than when you come as a child. The culture shock. Most of our refugee clients are coming from places where the climate is so much better, like warmer. It's warmer anyway, and then they come to Ohio, and they never had a winter coat before. So, and that was actually one of the things that I used to do a long time ago for Asia, is when they would get clothes, and then we'd be sorting clothes at Asia. I don't know that if we're doing that anymore, but a long time ago, when I was a volunteer for Asia, there was clothes sorting, and I used to see a lot of coats. Yeah, and then additionally, sometimes the communities that that come to this country, they're smaller in number, so the support system is a little bit different within the communities. So again, just kind of harkening back to my private practice days as a lawyer. So I used to have a client in Solon, Ohio, and I don't know if folks here in Stark County know Solon, Ohio, but it's kind of a I don't know what they call like a bedroom suburb of Cleveland, and you know where people will live there, but not necessarily work there. But there's still some industries, some corporations that are in Solon. And I had this client who had the audacity. I don't know if it's audacity or what word I'll call it, but he would say to me, you know, Elaine, I can't find people to work for my company. I've got these great jobs, and I can pay them. I can do all this, but I just can't find workers. And then and he said, you know, but you're Asian. I would love if your people would come work for me, because I know they're hard workers and this, that, and the other. And I was like, you know, please stop talking, you know. but he continued to talk. So I challenged him, and I said, yeah, but you're in Solon, Ohio. There isn't reliable public transportation to get from where they live, where these communities live, to Solon, Ohio. It would take them 2 hours on some sort of public transportation to get from where they live to Solon, Ohio. And I suggested to him, you know, is it possible they could have like some sort of shuttle? I mean, if you offered a shuttle from where these communities live, and then to get to your place of business, that might help them. And then his response was, oh no, Elaine, you know, there's plenty of places to live in Solon. Why don't they just move to Solon? And then they can just walk to work. And I said, please stop talking. Again, in my mind, you know, inside brain voice, stop talking. But I said to him, I had to explain to him, and I was shocked that I had to explain to him that the people live where they live because they have a community of support where they live, where their families live, where they worship, where they feel comfortable. And you know, but that fell on deaf ears. So that former client is still looking for workers, but I won't identify where. So okay, so these are for the social workers in the audience. So, and again, you know, it's kind of a two-way street in a lot of ways. I hope, you know, one of my hopes in this role is to provide some sort of transformation to the understanding, because there's, you know, cultural understanding or misunderstanding. It's two ways, right? It's not just on the side of the new arrival to this country. It's also on the side of that former client who doesn't get that you can't just move someone into an environment where they're not comfortable because of a job, you know. So that's a challenge that I hope we'll be making progress towards in the future. But just some vocabulary. So the goal is integration, so that you know so that immigrant values and the values of larger society are in balance. You know, if they're in balance, then we have integration, and that's the goal, because it's a two-way street. But you know, and I don't like this word. I don't like this word because sometimes colleagues in the lawyer community, where I sometimes where I lived for 13 years, but now I sometimes travel in, you know, they'll say like, oh, Elaine, you're so lucky. You're assimilated. You know, you basically have you're just a U.S. person. You know, no one would know that you're, you know, Chinese and Filipino. And it's like, okay, and I'm supposed to be happy about that. That's a good thing. I don't really like this term, but this is the term for when you know, someone from another country has basically adopted the culture where they're living. And you know, so when someone says, so when someone says, you know, oh Elaine, you're so lucky you're assimilated, and I'm like, yeah, I don't know that that's a compliment. But you know, and then the next category, this is like another vocabulary, you know, is separation. Is when an immigrant comes to this country and they just don't believe they don't believe that they're ever going to fit in, and so then that breeds separation. And then the last category, which is what we don't want, is marginalization. And that's where, you know, the immigrant doesn't identify with their original culture or their new country. Okay. So these are some of the programs, excuse me, and services that Asia offers, hoping to provide that support system for new arrivals, and also hopefully breeding that goal towards integration. In the social services realm, we have a Children, Youth, and Family Services Department, a Sustainability Services Department, our AHIMSA department, which is a kind of a rebranding on our Domestic Violence and Sexual Assault department. We have a Legal Services Department. We have Interpreting and Translation Services, and we have Civic Engagement. And then on the health services arm of our organization, we have the International Community Health Center. And then last but not least is our microloan and small business support operation. Okay, a little more detail about our services. So the Children, Youth, and Family Services, it provides programming for children from preschool to through high school, because it provides you know, academic assistance, acculturation, and enrichment. It is probably, you know, it is the oldest program at Asian Services in Action, and it addresses some of the I guess the unique challenges of coming to this country as a child. So if you come to this country as a child, you struggle with a lot of things. But one of the things that you might struggle with is I guess your identity in some ways, you know, language, and kind of feeling caught between those two worlds of their country of origin and the new country where they're going to live for the majority of their life. And some of the services also include the preschool services, where we provide in-home lessons for parents, so that the parents can become teachers for their children. Because in the process, we're also teaching the parents to be able to teach their children. Because if the parents are not able to speak the language or have struggles in that area, it makes it that much more challenging for their children to learn in home. Our sustainability services. So these are all of the I don't know, I'm going to call it like wraparound services that Asia provides. I mean, it's everything from benefits access to you know, economic development, to financial planning. So in the economic development realm, we have a workforce development program that provides assistance to new arrivals in terms of employment assistance, you know, training, English language classes, and then in the benefits access realm, that is providing assistance with you know, all types of enrollment in whether that is you know, health insurance or you know, financial needs, and then we also have emergency food assistance. Then we have financial capability, which includes assistance with income tax preparation, housing education, and financial literacy. The Sustainability Services Department has helped so many new arrivals with the purchase of their first home. And then additionally, we have the Lucky Seniors and Senior Services, which helps the aging adult population with socialization, because they're often isolated at home when their children are at work. The Ahimsa department. So the word Ahimsa, it means peace, and it's a Sanskrit word that means peace, and so it is a word that is used to assist domestic violence and sexual assault survivors in becoming comfortable to share their story, because it's really some of the most terrible circumstances that clients might have to come to the organization for assistance. And the cultural divide is that in some other countries, this type of behavior might be acceptable, even though it's not acceptable in this country. And so overcoming that barrier to knowing what their rights are in this country is significant. Perhaps in the refugee camps, they may or may not have had a support system where they could get help. Our legal services. So the natural service that we would provide are for immigration legal services, where we would provide assistance with status adjustments, naturalization, and now we have a new program that provides assistance for victims of crime other than domestic violence or sexual assault, such as theft, robbery, burglary, elder fraud and abuse, as well as hate and bias crimes. So naturally, because immigrants and refugees are new to this country and they don't know what their rights are, they are just kind of naturally more vulnerable to being the victim of a scam or something like that. And this particular program, it's a new program that we have in the Legal Services Department. It provides them with a staff attorney who can assist them through the process of either filing a police report or just reporting in general, because so many of the new arrivals have fear about interacting with law enforcement. And I'll share a story. I was sharing this in the car on the way here. So I have family members who live in other countries, and there was one summer where they all came for some sort of family reunion, and it was too many people to fit into the one car that our family had. So they were planning to rent a car and do that whole thing. And one of my uncles has an international driver's license, so he volunteered and said, okay, I'll be the driver and rent the car. And then another one of my family members said, no, you can't rent a car in the United States if you're not a citizen of totally misinformed, totally misinformed. Said, no, you can't rent a car in the United States. If they pull you over, they'll put you in jail, and it'll be a whole situation. And I'm like, and at the time I was a child of awareness. I was like probably like 10 years old. For this family reunion, and I was like, these people are crazy. Like, why would they think that if they, for some minor traffic violation, even if, and they're just worrying to the nth degree about what would happen to them in this country if they committed even an infraction as small as a traffic infraction, that they were worried about, it was that level of distrust for law enforcement. And it is remarkable to me, but that's the mentality, that's the thinking. That's the thinking of people when they come from another country and they don't know what their rights are. So our legal services department is there to assist them. Back to now on to the International Community Health Health Center, ICHC, which my mom still hopes I will become a medical doctor and work there. So this came to be, the International Community Health Center came to be because, for a number of reasons. The first reason was that in the early 2010s, Asia learned that there were people traveling by overnight bus to New York City in order to receive medical care, which is crazy. Medical care in language, because there wasn't such a option in Cleveland. And when people think of Cleveland, what do they think of immediately? They immediately think of the vast number of hospital systems. So much access to healthcare in Cleveland. And and I think in our community the response to that is there's a big difference between proximity to healthcare and access to healthcare. There's a big difference. And for the communities that Asian Services in Action serves, I mean, there's a whole language barrier. There's a whole cultural barrier, comfort level in obtaining healthcare in a setting that might not be linguistically or culturally appropriate. So the fact that there were Clevelanders riding an overnight bus to travel to New York City just so that they could get healthcare in language, we saw that as a need. And so we did our research, and then ultimately we had an opportunity to apply to the Health Services Administration to become a federally qualified health center. And we hoped, we prayed, and it happened. So in 2013, Asia became a federally qualified health center, and we have been providing primary health care for numerous patients in that time period, in language and in a culturally sensitive manner. And then the other need, not only what the need, for the cultural and linguistically, but also for new arrivals, there are health screening requirements, and at that time, the other community health centers were not able to address all of the volume of patients that needed their health screenings in a timely manner. We have since expanded to school-based health, where we are in the schools, in the Akron Public Schools and the Cleveland Public Schools, providing immunizations for the school-age children, because the state of Ohio has recently mandated immunizations for students, and that's a public health priority. So we're there to assist in that area as well. A couple weeks ago in Cleveland, Asia's site in Cleveland, we have two sites. We have one in Cleveland and one in Akron, but the Cleveland site relocated into Asia Plaza, and the focus there is on substance use disorder, mental health, behavioral health. So we're able to provide medically assisted treatment in response to the opioid crisis in Ohio. And because the challenge in that area is that probably 60% of people who have become in that situation where they're addicted to some painkillers, they were prescribed to them. You know, the painkillers were prescribed to them, and the fact that we're able to provide the medically assisted treatment is great. But we're also providing a culturally specific alternative for pain management, and that's in the form of acupuncture. So we offer acupuncture services as an alternative pain management system. And then in terms of mental health and behavioral health, as referenced earlier, new arrivals often have PTSD, so we have counselors that are available to provide them with assistance in supporting their mental and behavioral health. Okay, interpreting and translation services. The ITS department is providing services in the medical, legal, education, public government offices as well. It's for access, it's a requirement that that interpretation be available, and so Asia is able to provide that service. Additionally, folks will often reference and say, well, why do you need interpreters and translators, like people to do that kind of service? And when you have language line, you could just pick up a phone and use the language line. And the reality is that in person, what we've surveyed the recipients of our interpreting and translation services, and 100% of the clients have stated that in-person interpreting is best. Because imagine if you're in a medical setting and you're with a doctor, and having to describe the situation, and they can't see it, it is more than challenging. So. Okay, our community engagement services. So at Asia, we have a civic engagement department that focuses on not only voter outreach and education, but also for 2020, we will be focused on making sure that everyone is counted. The Asian community has been a particularly hard to count community because of misunderstandings and fear. I actually participated in some field work as a volunteer, going to homes to encourage folks to participate in the 2010 census, and it was a challenge because the folks that we would visit, and we were communicating in language, so it wasn't like I was speaking English at them and them not understanding. I was speaking in language to the folks that just to explain to them, because but what they really wanted was for someone to talk to them, and I will clarify that it was primarily aging adult addresses that we were doing the field work, and so they would invite us. They saw me, they saw me, and they said, "Oh, come on in, come on in," because it was a trusted face. But then when I tried to explain to them, okay, you need to fill out this census so that we can get funding for the next 10 years. Then the topic of conversation, or their interest in the conversation, kind of waned, because it was for them, their belief or their concern is that oh, why do I need to fill out this census? I'm an old Asian. No one cares about me. And so I spent a lot of time as a volunteer just sitting with these people to explain to them that you absolutely matter, and I'm here taking my as a volunteer sitting with you to explain that to you, and that was in 2010. So with the challenges between public charge, I don't know, folks, is anyone in this room familiar with public charge? Okay, wow, one person. So public charge is this legislation that the current federal administration has declared as a barrier for new arrivals. So the concept of public charge has always been part of immigration law, but now it has become enhanced to a point where most new arrivals are fearful of even being identified as a new arrival, because public charge puts a requirement on anyone coming into this country that they cannot use any public benefits, or else they would be considered someone that is dependent on public services, and the current administration doesn't want to provide any public assistance to someone who's new to this country. This is kind of going back to a mentality of we only want professionals who come to this country who already have money and what have you to add some sort of fiscal value to this country, and that has caused a lot of people to kind of go back into the shadows, and that's going to make the 2020 census work that much more challenging. So we have a lot of work to do in 2020, but the reality of it is that most people who come to this country from another country are probably the most risk-taking, entrepreneurial folks in this country who have made a difference. So the Apex Fund for Economic Opportunity is another program that we have at Asia to support and encourage those dreamers who have the American dream and want to start a business. It might surprise you that immigrants are 2 to 3 times more likely to become an entrepreneur than someone who's born in this country. And for some people, it is a situation where they have to become their own boss, because other challenges prevent them from traditional employment. But for others, they really do just have this dream, like they want to come to this country and make a difference and change and start a business. I can tell you, in my own family, my own immediate family, there are, I lost count of how many different entrepreneurs that there are in my family, but at least 10. There are at least 10 people in my own family that are entrepreneurs. They are restaurant owners, bakery owners. My aunt, who's not blood related to me, but she married my uncle, and she recently, like 5 years ago, she sold her soybean factory business to someone for how many digits is it? 7, for 8 figures. So she's retired. I mean, and she came to this country as a Chinese bride, at the age of 15. My uncle married her a million years ago, and she came to this country, and she 5 years ago she retired as the owner of a soybean factory business. So immigrants and refugees, they know how to get things done, because if they have survived some of the trials and challenges of their journey to this country, anything else is easy. So that's all I have, but thank you so much.
I'll have all the panelists, if they could have a seat.
stretch my back before I, because these are heavier than me, so I gotta stretch my back.
All right. So I will begin the introduction of all the panelists. We already we want to also thank Elaine for such a great presentation, explaining about the community and the services that they provide to us well. So we'll start with Kim. Kim Shea is the advisor at Stark State College. Kim's journey started on April 17, 1975, the day that most Cambodian people remember in their hearts, when communist Khmer Rouge took power. At the age 5, she had traveled to the countryside by foot and was assigned to a concentration camp. Surviving this major ordeal, her journey to America began in 1979 with the Khmer Rouge regime was toppled by the North Vietnamese invasion. The regime ended and the camps were closed, and people were allowed to go back to their homes. Reunited with her mother and younger siblings after months in the refugee camps, the family was able to resettle in America. Life in America was nice, even though she could not speak the language. Being here gave her the opportunity to go to school and be treated as a normal human being. She progressed throughout her school years and realized that she had a second chance at life. Pursuing her career in higher education, she worked hard to complete a bachelor's in political science and public administration and a master's in higher education from the University of Wisconsin-La Crosse. She has been working in the higher education environment for the last 23 years. She has enjoyed working with student affairs and advising. Kim has been married to her husband for 20 years, and together they have a son. Her husband is also a Cambodian refugee who went through a similar experience. He works for an automotive company as a mechanical engineer. Once Kim married, her mother joined her here in Ohio. The next panelist, we have Susan Wong. She is the Chief Programmer Officer of Asia. Susan Wong started her career with Asia Services in Action Incorporated in 2002, serving as a bicultural educator under the Sustainability Service Department. Over the years, she has served in various capacities at Asia Incorporated. Today, she is a Chief Program Officer overseeing most of Asia's direct service department. Susan has been instrumental in growing and starting new and innovative programs in line with the needs of Asia's clients. She's actively participated within immigrants and refugee communities in the Northeast Ohio area through educational, nutritional, and social events. Susan graduated with her bachelor's from Kent State University. In addition, she received a certificate in a nonprofit management from Cleveland State University. All right. Next we have Tanda. Tanda Cho Nukong Fong. Right? All right. Sorry, that was a challenging one. She is the Assistant Program Manager of Asia's Interpreting and Translation Service Department. Tanda and her husband, mutual passion and curiosity in learning, experiencing different cultures and countries, brought them to the U.S. in 2016, when her husband received the opportunity to relocate to Ohio. It was in Ohio where she was first introduced to Asia, a nonprofit organization dedicated to support communities in Northeast Ohio. She utilized her customer service knowledge and multicultural experience through her work in Asia Incorporated. It has been a very rewarding and inspiring to be able to positively impact and make a difference in the lives of people in real need. She is willing to continue learning in order to bring the support to the communities to a higher level. She is fluent in Thai and Mandarin Chinese. Young Ray Kim, our next panelist. He is the Program Assistant within Asian Sustainability Service Department. Mr. Kim was born in Korea, but immigrated to the United States in 2015. He presently works with Asia Services in Action Incorporated as a program assistant in the self-sufficient department. He previously worked with a Korean shipping company to handle exporting and importing cargoes worldwide. Mr. Kim also worked in Italy and India as a branch manager and frequently took business trips to China. Awesome, thank you. And then our last but not least is Police Officer Dunbar Suba.
I see how it goes. I'm the last one.
So he is Mr. Suba was born in Bhutan. He left Bhutan due to the civil revolution ethnic cleansing when he was 2.5 years old. He spent 17 years in a refugee camp in Nepal. While in Nepal, Dunbar obtained a proficiency level certificate in physics. He was provided and accepted a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to come to America in July 2008. It took 2 years of interpreting courses to become nationally certified as a Nepali medical interpreter. Mr. Suba became the first in Ohio and one of only 7 in the United States. He worked at Akron Children's Hospital for 5 years as a Nepali medical interpreter, helping providers and the Nepali-speaking Bhutanese refugee community. In 2018, he became the first police officer in the Akron Police Department and in Ohio from a Nepali-speaking Bhutanese refugee background. Now, there are youth from the immigrant communities who want to become police officers. Dunbar shared that every single day he is so excited and honored to work for his community and live his great life in America. Let's give him a round of applause. And for those who have any questions, please feel free to write them on the index card, and some of our volunteers will be helping around if you could see them in the back. Just wave your card and they'll be able to pick them up. All right, we're going to start with our first question, and then we'll start with Elaine. So, during your time as an advocate for Asian Incorporated, what were some of the challenges for the Asian community, and are they still facing them today?
So, one of the So, I guess to answer the question, I actually have to take one step back because, the Asian community is not monolithic. The Asian community includes, so many different individual communities, that span the greater Asian community, and their needs are different depending on which community we're talking about. And I'll just list some, just of one small segment. In the mental health, behavioral health space, for some of the Asian communities, there's an exceptionally large stigma. Not just, I know that across the board there is a social stigma for any community as it relates to mental health and behavioral health. But in certain Asian communities, that stigma is enormous, and I think that like breaking down that barrier is one challenge. Is one challenge that the community faces, and has faced for a number of years. And then the other one other challenge that the community has generally faced is just kind of some stereotypes about the culture and what and what the culture entails. So I think that it's important for all of us to kind of continue that conversation, because as I said at the beginning, it's a two-way street. It's a two-way street of understanding. It's not just for the new arrival to understand and integrate to the new country, but it's also incumbent upon the people that are already here to help and support and understand what the new arrival is experiencing.
Excellent. Thank you so much. All right, we have an open question here from the audience. So this is concerning some of your summer programs. So can kids participate if they reside in Stark County? And is it specifically for Asian cultures, or do you accept various immigrant cultures for the summer program? And if so, is there information on your website?
Okay, so the primary challenge is transportation. So if someone from Stark County is able to get transported to where the programming is happening,
then I'm sure that there's a way that they can be enrolled. And then with regard to the demographic, you know, the name Asian Services in Action was a name that was created by the founders, but like you saw in the historical summary that I shared, the communities that have been coming to this country have changed and shifted, and one of the new immigrant and refugee communities that are coming to this country include you know, African, you know, like Congolese immigrants and refugees, and so Asia is serving that population. So definitely not limited. I mean, our target population that we would like to serve are immigrants and refugees from any country, and because we have an increasing number of staff members that speak Spanish, we're able to also provide capacity to serve Spanish-speaking populations.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. So our next question is going to be for Kim. So could you share a bit of your story and what has helped you to succeed in overcoming your barriers?
Well, at age 5, as can everybody hear me? Age 5, Cambodia invaded in 1975, and we were torn apart as family. My father had to answer to the leader when they have us activate our home into the jungle, literally in the jungle, and you eat whatever you could find at the time. And what they round up the family all together in groups, and they ask lawyers, doctors, engineers are coming forward. Guess what they do to them? Execute them. And we didn't, as a little child, we didn't know, but Dad and Mom keep whispering at all of us, saying, we're a farmer. But they know better, because they see how my father dressed at the time when we evacuated. In the morning, he was getting ready for work. And the chaos got into our town, and it's the biggest city other than the capital. I was born in Battambang. And then after that, we couldn't even drive the car we had because we had to walk on foot in order to escape the execution. We saw what happened to our neighbor. He refused to give the keys to the Khmer Rouge, which is the regime that was marching in with the tank and everything. And I didn't know anything what's going on, because at 5, what do you know? You know, my dad called all of us, and then we escaped the back door at that time. And what you have on, and that's all. And because of my mom's really smart, and she back home we invest a lot in golds and all of that metal. So she took the pillowcase and dumped everything in there, and we escaped the back door to save our life, and then just blend into with the rest of the folk on the street. As we made it with the rest of the people into the jungle, they tried to separate all of us, and I was old enough to be in the child labor camp at age 5, and I have a total of 10 siblings. Only 4 survived. I'm the oldest now, and I don't know how my mom made it, but she did. She made it, us all here. But not only that, we lived through the concentration camp. I did, separate from my mom. By the time I got united with her, she did not recognize me. So it was one of her friends who knew of me, so took myself to her, and sorry. So my dad had told my mom, no matter what happened, we're going back to our original home. So she kept going with the rest of the folks and able to come back to home. But home, right then, everybody first come, first served. There's no paper claiming whose house and whatnot. So we didn't get to our house fast enough. There are other people, and so we just stayed. They were nice enough to have us stay for a while, because my mom was hoping that my dad would come back to meet us all. However, we waited about 2 weeks. We met other family. And I told my mom, because at age 7, I saw him got executed by my camp because they were demonstrating what they did to people who misbehave, that's how they call it. But anyway, I told my mom, I said, they killed Dad. She said, no, they can't. You have an illusion. It can't be. I said, no, Mom, we called him, give him a name. Because in the camp, we had to change our name. But anyway, God gave us a second chance. We have a whole bunch of folks round up as a group and say, we have got to hit Thailand camp. There's resources out there to help you. And the guy who knows the journey through the jungle, he asked for some money, and the currency back then, you either have some sort of trading, rice or foods, or my mom was smart because of all that time, all that gold. You know, bamboo is hollow. She cracked each section through metal and tossed all that gold in there and sealed one end because one end is already sealed. But she sealed both just so it looked even and to carry the child and stuff out of the jungle there. Nobody suspected she had that. So the guide asked for some gold, and she's not gonna show him that she has a lot, so she got a bracelet. She said, is this okay that you can take that to Thailand? He said, yeah, and she said, I cannot give you now, but I can chop a half and give it to you and save the other half till you get us there. So through that jungle, it took us 2 days we only can walk during the day because of the landmine. We miss a step from what he's doing ahead. We saw a lot of blow-up bodies here and there, but it's nothing surprising to me because I lived through the killing fields. And that's one of the movies that made out. Not many people know that movie exists, but it exists. In 1983, one of my dad's colleagues, Dr. Hengno, was the main character in that movie. Survived all of that, but he didn't survive the LA street. He got shot when I was in college. I was devastated because I was hoping that I can ask him more about my dad, because they spent years together studying. But anyway, as we arrived to the refugee, I had to help my mom deliver my youngest sister because she was pregnant and it was never explained what happened. We just keep it silent. So I helped her, and there's some older folks helping her. I was about 8 and a half. You know, I see what she went through. I said, no way in hell am I going to have a child. You know, the jungle, you know. So my youngest sister, she named her Lee, and in our language, Lee means carry on. And so she made it to the camp, the refugee camp, early in 1979, right at the border of Thai and the refugee camp. So we made it there, and they treated her so because she lost a lot of blood and all that. We made it there, and it was so chaotic in that early time. Families tried to search for one another. She contacted one of the people there that can speak English and spoke to the UN person and searching for my uncle who came before the war to UCLA for his degree. And the U.S. government was very, very kind back then. He asked for asylum to not return back to home because it's a war zone, so they allowed him to stay, and he made a life of himself and then reached out to us at the refugee camp. He got us in 1980, but we have to jump through a lot of hoops because they make sure I don't have Ebola. No, just kidding. But they make sure we don't have any disease or belong to certain group that U.S. don't want to have you in. but they have all that, and my mom and 4 children, including myself, the first step we step on that plane, that's when we know that we're surviving. And of all places, it's not fair. He lived in UCLA, California, LA, but he put us in Rochester, Minnesota in October because he did his research. The education system has always been really important to our family. So he got an apartment there, and he's helped support us through 2 years because we are not allowed to get any public help, because he has signed an agreement with the government saying, my family, I will provide them, and this is my asset. And the government see he has enough asset to allow all 5 of us in. So we stay in an apartment for 2 years, and my mom, my uncle kind of dry out of resources. So he asked my mom, sis, what can you do? She said, well, I always been a homemaker. I don't have education. I don't have credit. I don't speak English, and I don't know about this culture. What? I don't know. And he said, well, think hard. What can you do to help your children? She said, but I can cook. And the smile just right out of his face. And so he trusted in her. So he opened a little cafe, and I was a child labor then.
Me too.
Yes.
Me too.
And I hated kitchen, so I'm not a good cook by that experience. But I used to boo-hoo after school because all my friends would be playing, and I'm in the kitchen, you know, helping with the dishes or cutting vegetables or cleaning toilet and floor and all that. And every so often my mom would pick up a map and a pen, and we'd sit back there and she asked, okay, this is America. There's a lot of opportunity. It doesn't matter which one you go for, but let me elaborate a little bit on this. She said, a map? Maybe you make it, maybe not. I'm not sure, but it doesn't matter if that's what you want, but you will never see American dream on the map. And a lot of headache, tears, pain, whatever you're going through, but it's American dream. So all 4 of us, she doesn't know much about the education system, but every conference at school we have, she would help me as a translator because I'm the oldest one, and I cannot lie to her. You know, whatever the teacher said, I have to tell as it is, and she would speak a few words of broken English to the teacher and say, no matter what happened, if my kids misbehave at school, you let me know. The teacher, okay. You know, so I think we're afraid of my mom worse than boot camp. You know, so, but of all that struggle, we didn't give up. She never hardly see us. I was the second mom, make sure the 3 children wash up and clean, go to school, and we would sit and help each other doing homework and work a little bit at the restaurant, and then finally everybody get meal and then walk back home to the apartment. In a matter of between 2 to 3 years, she was able to expand and got American Dream Home. We call it a dream home because that's a dream home to us. So after that, I always in my mind that my mom was not unable to get a citizenship. So when I was in school, at the end of my high school, I have the best counselor and teachers who know how much I want the American dream. And so she made sure that I have the citizenship, and it was only cost $50 back then. Yeah, so now it's more, but anyhow, I got that, and I was blessed with all kinds of scholarships, and I got through the school with tuition, you know, and then my second year I become an RA and all that on the campus to support myself. But I worked like 2, 3 jobs throughout college, and I know what I want, but with all that, it led me to wonderful people who helped me along the way and accomplish, and the rest of my siblings all got at least a master or more, and my sister is a doctor. she's the one I said, I help you a lot, let me check your head because I pulled your heart and make sure it's all intact. And she said, yeah, it's all intact. So now we all have our own family. And when we get in together with holiday, we usually tease my mom, who's going to be 90 in April. So we usually tease her that, she's misused us as a child laborer, and that's against the law. So she looked at us, she said, well, you all made it, you'll be okay. So, and not only that, when I was in all the health crisis with cancer and all that, I was staying at the operation bed. I keep thinking, if I can get through the killing pills, nothing else will kill me. That's how crazy my thought was. But other than that, I'm really happy to be part of this community and also work at Stark State.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right. We're going to our next question. This will be an open question for everyone from the audience. Does Asia provide services outside of Cuyahoga and Summit counties? Specifically, are services available in Stark County?
Sure. Like Elaine said, we provide service actually not only across the board Northeast Ohio. We provide services actually is the whole state of Ohio. So the thing is, transportation is the one major challenge right now at this moment, because every single day I see my staff taking the client, transport them from home to the office to do some paperwork, access the benefit, employment as well, and the other activity. So as long as we are able to provide someone able to assist the transportation portion, we would be fine with that.
Perfect. Thank you. And then to continue with your part, or do you want to add something, Mr. Kim? Okay. All right. So we're going to go on to our next question. For Susan too. So through your programming services, what are some of the barriers faced by the community, and what advice would you give to the audience that has helped you overcome them?
So this is also repeat a lot of information from Elaine's side portion, because we are as an immigrant refugee, we have a culture barrier, we have a language barrier, and then also transportation is a big challenge. Because among those barriers actually create the isolation. Because one thing is, when you think about one step back, what consequence of isolation? That is related mental health. So it's just a lot of things actually is how you're able to, as a from the mainstream, how you be more proactive, working with non-English speaker. In some way, may I jump off with this question? Can I ask you, how many folks in this room travel different continental?
Different continents?
Different continental, outside of United States. So I encourage every single one, without raise a hand, try to travel different continental, taste different culture, because this is the best way and knowledge, and learn the skill how to communicate with the people different from you. Because I encourage my girl, and my girl right now is 18. We travel every single continental by the time when she was 5. I remember the first language she said, "Mom, how come the people all have black hair? How come the people have a black hair? How come their skin is different from me?" She couldn't see herself. Actually, she had a black hair and yellow skin. But the thing is, I encourage every single one, try to put yourself and put into their shoes, your client, your patient's shoes. Because one thing is, reading a book is a good knowledge resource, but reality, reality, the connection and the communication is the best way to learn.
Excellent.
And patient is another thing. Just like me, language have a barrier. I have a culture barrier. So you need to be patient with me, because one thing is, when you talk about, I have a heavy accent, and the people say, what? What? I don't understand. I don't understand. Find an interpreter. And something is you need to understand the people, where they're coming from. When you're talking to people from Scotland, they also have accent, but they speak English.
That's very true. All right. We're going to take our next question, which is open up for anybody in the audience. If some of the people haven't learned their own language, doesn't it make it harder for them to learn it as an adult? And how does their own people view them? You want to take it?
Okay. I could answer these questions. Something that is related with me.
I'm sorry. There's another part of that too.
Oh.
Sorry, there was I didn't see it says turnover. Is this a myth or is it true? In the Asian culture, if there's a firstborn that was female and not male, do they give them away or harm them? Okay. I'm gonna pass this card so you can.
Yeah, for this, the second one,
You
Susan
wanna
is the
pass it
best
down?
person.
So I think this is because of the policy of one-child policy in China. And it happens, but also at the same time, so I feel bad for a lot of girls who was born in China. That is really happened. And the good thing is a lot of international adoption centers actually helping those girls come to different international, just like Susan is also one of those, is an adopted girl from Taiwan. So this is something happened, but the policy, they changed in a couple of years ago because the population is going down. So they accept that. A lot of people, they found out that in our culture, boy is the best. It's like, for me, I'm the older girl in the family. That has happened to me too. Even though I grew up in Hong Kong, especially like my dad is the oldest son in his family. That is what happened. When I was born, I see it. I didn't know that until my mom told me. So, but the good thing is at that moment, I was not born in a one-child policy. That's why I didn't be thrown away.
Thank you so much, Susan, to sharing with us. I could add something about the one-child policy, like the girl. I am from Thailand, but my grandpa and grandma, they are from China. So I was born in Thailand, and like I heard a lot of one sentence. They say like, if you have a girl, meaning like you have a toilet in front of your house. That is the expression that they say like, okay, they do not willing to have a girl as a first child in the family, in Chinese family. But I believe that is like back in, like few decades ago. So right now, we are all equal. They are happy to have us. In my family, I am twins, so in my family, we only have 2 girls, and then I have a happy family, so, yeah.
The next question.
So the next question is, if some of the people haven't learned their own language, doesn't it make it harder? Yes. So in this case, it is, for me, I could relate it with that because I learned Chinese when I was 25 years old. Luckily that at the time I studied Chinese in China. So it is easy for me to talk with people, to talk with local people. So I know slang, and then I understand more because I talk with them on daily basis. But let's say I studied English when I was like kindergarten, like A, B, C, D, E, F, G, something like that. But we do not have a chance to learn or to practice with a native language, a native speaker. So I still have like quite heavy accent, even though I know English and then I learn. But I believe that my grammar skill, if there is a test, I will be 100% correct. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. And then the next question is for you, Tanda. So could you share the importance of your services as the Assistant Program Manager of Asia's Interpreting and Translation Services and how it impacts the community?
So for that, as in this role, there are two questions that I ask myself every day in the morning. First, do I have sufficient professional interpreter? Second, do I have the right system, the right processes to support the communities? Every day, you know, we impact in people's life every single day. It could be medical related, it could be legal related, or social services related. Every emails we receive, we process it through our system and we assign to the right interpreter. So when that moment is done, you know, I feel like, okay, we made something, you know, we make change, we make difference in someone's life. Let's say if you guys speak English, but imagine yourself to travel somewhere, let's say in Thailand. You don't know Thai language at all. You have a headache. You want to go to see the doctor, but you cannot speak. So how can you communicate with the doctor? Or at least if you want to go to pharmacy to buy a pill killer, how you gonna communicate with them? So I mean, like, it's something that I am happy, truly happy that, you know, we have the community every single day. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we're gonna get another open question. So as a community health center, how can we reach out to provide services to the Asian community in Stark County?
Again, transportation. So, you know, as many health systems that exist in the contiguous counties, you know, Cuyahoga, Summit, Stark, it doesn't mean that there's access, and so transportation, if there is the ability to get to our health centers, that is, I guess, best. But we are also developing a telehealth opportunity in the coming future. That's one of our priorities for the next, well, I mean, it's part of our strategic plan for the next 3 years, which is now almost, you were already a year in, so 2 years left to implement. But we're starting in the behavioral health space because that is an area where the implementation's a little bit easier to be able to have a virtual session with a patient. So the short answer is we are working on it.
All right, excellent. Okay, the next question will be for Mr. Kim. If you want to, you can grab the mic from there. You can pull it out too. There you go. All right, so Mr. Kim, can you share with us a success story of how you support the Asian community?
Yeah, I'm a newcomer to States that I came to here just 4 years because my first daughter came to America 20 years ago. She worked in Chicago and Boston, now in Cleveland. She's working Cleveland Clinic. After that, my second daughter, my second son-in-law, he came to here 5 years ago. Now he's working in Vanderbilt University in Nashville. That's why my wife and myself, we are just two in Korea. That's why they invited we come to here. That's why I am here now. Also, I worked in abroad in Italy 3 years, and 5 years in India, and almost 2 years in China. So I worked and traveled so many countries because I was working with a shipping company. So I came to here, America, but I think here is, I feel is not foreign country because I'm not exactly, I worked in several foreign countries and then also I can speak English. So this is my story. This is question is some success, but I have just 4 years. Just I just after, for example, just as an interpreter, Korean senior members, 11 families now is living in a senior apartment in Cleveland downtown. They are over 75 years old. They could not speak nothing. So that's why I've been there once or twice to visit them and translate their any problem. Also, end of year they have to renew our Medicare prescription something. And also I have some Korean old aged two women. They need an interpreter to get citizenship in the USCIS interview. So anyhow, fortunately, they got passed and then they got citizenship. Also, I would like just to introduce a Korean community here. As far as I know, it's about 2,000 Korean people living in Cleveland area. I think among them, almost 80 or 90% of people is there, go to church every Sunday. So Korean community is, how to say, church is a hub or a center of the socialization and people gathering, familiarizing to get any information. So I think now is Korean church is a very big role for Korean people, for Korean community. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you for that. So we're going to ask our question to Officer Suga. Could you share a bit of your story of how you became the first Akron police officer from Nepali Bhutanese refugee background, and what has helped you to succeed in overcoming your barriers?
First of all, can you all able to see me? Because it's difficult to see me because of my height issues. Just want to make sure, if not, I can stand on top of this table. So anyway, I lived in refugee camp in Nepal for 17 years. That is pretty much half of my life. So it's a one thing to actually watch movies or all about America in TV versus actually come here and see live. Because back in refugee camp, I used to watch like Rocky, Rambo, Commando, all those martial arts movies all day long, once in a year, right? Then when I came to here, because I knew nothing about the US, and I wish I knew that Ohio actually has bunch of snow, that I would actually pick a nicer area, but didn't know anything about that. So I just picked in a map, where do you want to go? This place. Boom, landed here. Anyway, we came, me and my mom, dad, I was 19 at the time. I was leading whole family, 6 family members, and basically I was kind of scared at the time. I came to New York City, John F. Kennedy. As soon as I landed in the airport, I saw American folks like you guys. I never saw tall, big folks like you guys before. I was average height in my tribe. I'm like, this is freaking, it's like Mount Everest. So anyway, I was kind of scared. Then we went to hotel. Hopefully I don't offend anyone here. So I went to this hotel, stayed there for one night, and I ordered a vegetarian meal, because we don't eat beef. So just to be in a safe side, I ordered a vegetarian meal. And this gentleman brings a bowl of rice, and on top of rice, there's a big chicken leg. I'm like, oh, okay. How am I gonna eat this? There is no ghost pepper here. I needed some chili, but obviously I don't have. So here I am thinking, I'm like, I saw in the airport a couple hours ago, these people are tall and big, and these chickens are also freaking big in the US. And what's up with this? Then later I found out that I was actually turkey, not a chicken. That gave me a little bit boost, like, okay, I can survive. So anyway, fast forward, I was working in Akron Insurance, helping out community, trying to be a cultural broker, and eventually community started to have problems in a legal settings, not able to know the cultural differences. For instance, not able to know you're not supposed to have actually a live pig in your house and just slaughter and eat. One of those stuff, we don't know any better than that. Because back in Nepal, it was completely okay. You bring a goat, you bring a chicken, you bring water buffalo, you are slaughter and you eat with friends and family. That's what people started to do. And your neighbor obviously did not like it. So your neighbor started to call police. And there comes the problem. Then eventually in our meetings, and people started to brought up these issues in community, like, we don't know the culture, we don't know the laws, we don't know the city ordinance, what do you need to do? Then I'm like, you know what? Why don't we become a police? One of us should be a police. Everyone laughed at me. Because I have never seen a police officer like me, kind of short, small dude, brown skin in city of Akron. Anyway, everyone laughed at me and they were like, Dumble, that's a joke. The Dumble, that's a piece of joke, just ignore it. Anyway, then city of Akron actually came to different communities, came to International Institute, Asian Inc., to recruit minority people. Like they were trying to recruit diversity in their department. So then I applied back in 2015. I didn't even tell my wife back then because she would not even believe me. So then I had to go for this civil service test. It was really February, that was in February of 2017. No, that was February of 2016. It was really cold, I had a crappy vehicle, and then I stood in nice tie, coat, whatever, and then I told my wife, I'm gonna go apply, I'm gonna actually do a test for this police officer job. And she just looked at me, she was like, you're kidding me, right? And I said, no, I'm not kidding. And then she was like, she laughed and she actually fell on a couch. And I'm like, thanks for the motivation, encouragement. That's all I needed here. So then I left. And here I am. There were, I think, more than thousands of people, applicants. And I felt like I was one of those, I don't know if you guys watched Lord of the Ring movie. It's one of those alien creatures. I was like trying to sneak here and there. And this intake lady was like, what are you here for? I'm like, what do you mean? I'm actually an applicant. I'm here to actually take a civil service test. She looked at me from head to toe. And I'm like, okay, there you go. But in my mind, I'm sure she's not believing on me, but I've been through a lot of rough situations in my life. I know how to actually survive without having a roof on top of your head, not having a meal, sometimes running away from the elephant. It was pretty fun experiences. Trying to hunt a snake. I'm like, yeah, this is nothing. We have great system here. I was kind of, trying to encourage myself, and then I sat in a test, took exam, I did well in the score. As far as physical fitness goes, it was not that much struggle for me because I always was fit. I was always in martial arts back in Nepal also, here also, I was always fit, no big deal, but people didn't believe on me still. Some people wanted to challenge me. That was pretty fun though. Anyway, then eventually I ended up in a chief's interview. Then I got a chief interview on Monday. By Tuesday morning, the whole community knew that I got a conditional job. Like there are more than 5,000 to 10,000 Bhutanese refugees in Akron area. Everyone knew me. They started to email me, they started to phone call me, they're like, congrats buddy, congrats big brother, proud of you. I'm like, look at you guys, you changed your skin. So anyway, they were so supportive, and then I'm like, even that's a big stress now. I have so much weight on my shoulder that I need to carry. Now if I fail in academy, oh boy, it's going to be really disaster. Then anyway, went to the academy, did fantastic, and then got out and became an officer. Then after I became an officer, man, I'm telling you, everyone wants to be your friend in community, which they already knew me. But anyway, the biggest thing is that now the young guys from community, when they see me, they come to me and they were like, how how do I be a police? Now they have a hope that they can be a police after seeing me. And some even Afghan dude comes to me and try to actually measure my height. Like, dude, we can be a police now. I'm like, sure, just need to work hard. So I try to encourage all the folks from the Congos, from Korean community, from Nepali folks, and that's what I'm doing in City of Akron. I'm trying to help out in the community, trying to be a cultural broker. That's all.
Thank you so much for that. So we have our last question from the audience. Are there volunteer opportunities for college students that have cars? I don't know.
Yes, if they have a car, absolutely, we welcome college students. Anyone that wishes to volunteer and help our organization, you're absolutely welcome. Welcome in the Asia House anytime.
All right. I'm going to ask this last question. We'll have a minute to answer. And what advice would you give everyone here about the community and how to support them? What is like one quick thing you could tell everybody here?
I mean, I think that some of the folks on the panel have already talked about some of the things that you can do. I mean, having patience, being supportive, because even when there's a language barrier, being upbeat in your body language and everything else is extremely helpful and supportive.
Does anybody else want to add to that question?
What was the question?
So what advice would you give the audience of how they can support the community?
Actions speak louder than words, so even your gestures to some of the folks out there, and because of cultural barrier too, when they look at your gesture, it's a feel already. So reaching out a hand, talk to them and in slow, and it's not talking to them that are retarded or anything, excuse my wording, but I noticed some folks, they don't have that intent the way they speak to people of another language, but they speak to them either too loud, they're not deaf, okay, or they speak too slow, like, do you, it's just so ridiculous. They're like, oh, no, that's not the way they can tell that how you treat them.
Yeah.
So just an open arm, and honestly, if you don't understand something, just ask questions.
Anybody else would like to add to that? All right, let's give a round of applause to our panelists. So I would like to first thank our speaker, Elaine, for bringing such an amazing presentation, and our panelists for sharing their story with us. Thank you, everyone, for coming to our population-focused learning series. I hope this event has brought some awareness of the Asian culture and community. Please fill out your survey, and you may leave them on the table as you go. Please look at our StarkMHAR website for more information about the rest of our population-focused learning series 2020 and save the dates. Our next training session will be on the deaf and hard of hearing culture and community in March. Thank you all again for being here, and I hope you enjoy your Thanksgiving festivities. Thank you.
Thank you.